On this episode of Locked On Angels, with the Yanks coming into town, let's talk about A-Rod for a second. He said something this past offseason that got my attention, that got John's attention, because he said something very surprising about the Angels. Let's talk about it. It's time to get locked on with Mike and Jon, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to get back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe and become a Locked On everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube, leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation. And today's show is brought to you by one of our favorite everydayers, Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase.
Happy Tuesday to you, and thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is Jon, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother Jon.
Mike, it's our third season here at Locked On Angels. We're covering the Angels Monday through Friday. In addition to our friend Gavin Carlson doing postcasts, he's covering the Angels right after the game, and he's been doing a great job so far in his first few starts. Unfortunately, most of them have come after losses. So,
right.
Gavin, get used to it over there, my friend. But we will connect with him at some point and get us all on the show together, and that'll be a lot of fun. Hey, on today's show, since the Yanks are coming to town, we thought it would be a good time to talk about A-Rod. Why? Well, we'll tell you why and some things he had to say before the season started. But we do want to get you ready for this Yankees series as the Yankees come to town. Of course, it'll turn Angel Stadium into Yankee Stadium West, as we're all very used to. But Mike, I think you did a great job here kind of highlighting what to expect as the Yankees roll into town. So let's get into it.
Johnny, I was looking at the comments from yesterday's show, and I loved one of our everydayers said, as we were talking about playing teams not in the AL West, they said, "Don't worry, Mike. I think we play the AL West at least one more time this season." Because it doesn't feel like we play the West at all. We're playing the AL East with the Yankees coming to town. They're in first place right now, Johnny, 1.5 games ahead of the Orioles, 19-10 on the road, Jon. And so they're a good road team. Hey, by the way, the Angels are a really good road team as well.
Right.
Not a great home team right now. The Yanks have the best AL run differential. They're second as of this recording in baseball behind the Phillies overall in baseball. And here's their run differential. They've scored 266 runs so far and have given up 174 runs. Wow. So a great run differential. Yanks are first in home runs, walks, on-base percentage, slugging, on-base plus slugging, on-base plus slugging plus, OPS plus, total bases, and get this, Jon, sacrifices, bunts, and sacrifice flies.
Of course.
The very thing that we keep talking about how the Halos need to do. Maybe the Yanks have figured out and stole from us how to nickel and dime their way to wins.
They stole the Angels' powers like in the Monstars did to Space Jam. Hey, the pitching staff, Mike, ranks first in ERA, saves, innings pitched, and third in strikeouts. The Yanks have a 5-man rotation and have only had 5 guys start for them this season. And they've done all of this without Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole has not pitched an inning yet. And they are actually asking the question, should the Yankees move to a 6-man rotation when Garrett Cole's ready to come back? Because the 5 guys they've had have been phenomenal.
Yes.
And we'll get into how they line up against the Angels. Get this, 4 of the 5 starters have an ERA under 3. The only one over 3 is Nestor Cortez, who's got an ERA of 3.29. Oh, darn, what a terrible
That's
ERA. And in fact, Nestor Cortez is starting tonight against Griffin Canning. Of the Halos' potential starters, Taylor Ward has the most at-bats with 8 and has limited success. He's got a 125 average and a 236 OPS against Nestor Cortez. On the contrary, Canning hasn't had much success against the Yankees. 4 potential starters on the Yankees have hit over 400. And of course, Aaron Judge has hit 500 against Griffin Canning. And then Wednesday's game is Luis Hill versus Tyler Anderson. Mike, Heel is somebody I sneakily picked up in fantasy at the beginning of the season.
Hold on.
And it has paid off.
Sneakily?
Sneakily.
You're an English major? Is that a word?
Yes.
It is a word. Okay,
Yes.
Continue.
As of this recording, it's a word. I've lucked out, Mike. I mean, he's got double-digit Ks in his last 2 games and has just been incredible for the Yankees this season. He comes in with a 6-1 record and a 2.11 ERA.
Wow.
Anderson is 5-4 with a 2.52 ERA. No Halos have a recorded at bat against Hill. The Yanks haven't had much success against Anderson outside of Anthony Rizzo. So that one might actually be a game in which there's a pitcher's duel going on. We'll see what happens on Wednesday as it's Hill versus Anderson.
Johnny, was Hill, and obviously we don't follow the Yankees. We probably need to ask Stacy from Locked On Yankees. Was he the guy that replaced their ace?
Garrett
Cole? Or do you know?
I'm not sure. I think that's the case because coming into the season, I don't think he was part of the plan because they've had Cortez, they've had Carlos Rodon, they added Marcus Stroman.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not 100% if he's the replacement here, but man, he has been a revelation for them. And speaking of Rodon, he's going on Thursday, right, Mike?
Yeah, he's going against Patrick Sandoval. So Rodon is 6-2 with a 2.95 ERA. All of these guys and their ERAs and their win total is pretty remarkable so far. Sandy's 2-7, John, 5.60 ERA. He has really not been great against the Yanks, but in the last few starts, he's had some success against them, especially against Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge is only batting 200 against Patrick Sandoval. When it comes to Rodon, the Angels have had a lot of success against him. In fact, Louis Renjifo's hitting 1,000, so he hasn't recorded an out yet. Taylor Ward is batting over 400, and so is Kevin Pillar. He's actually hitting over 600 against Rodon. So I would expect to see those guys in the starting lineup on Thursday, and that's a night game as well. All of these games are at 6:38. Each of them are in Anaheim Stadium.
Yeah, and you're expecting some pretty good crowds with the Yankees coming to town, and so certainly the season ticket holders can take advantage of that and sell their tickets to these Yankee games.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Johnny, some of the keys for success for the Angels against the Yanks are not going to be surprising. These are things that the Angels need to do and have to continue doing. And when they've won games, they've done 3 of these things really well. Each of these 3 things really well. The first, Johnny, is contact. They have to make contact. The Yanks are 3rd in strikeouts. Their pitching staff has missed a lot of bats, which is great. However, for the Angels, they need to make contact. They need to make sure that they're hitting the ball in the air, hitting the ball on the ground against these Yankee starters and the Yankee bullpen, because when they do, they've had a whole lot more success. And when you face a really good team, you find out, like against the Guardians this last weekend, you find out when you're not making contact that they're not going to throw you anything that is going to be in the strike zone, right? Like they're going to throw you things that they're going to try to get you to swing over. So if you're not going to make contact, then you need to pick your pitch, and your pitch selection needs to be strong. Like you need to be aware of the strike zone and aware of where these pitchers are going. So the first key for the Angels against the Yanks, Johnny, is they're going to have to make contact against this starting 5 and going to have to make contact against this bullpen.
I'm looking at Twitter as you were talking right now, not to ignore what you were saying. I was actually thinking about contact, and I was thinking about Michael Stefanik down with the Salt Lake Bees. Mike, maybe we see a move for Stefanik to come up and Kyron Parrish to go back to the minor leagues, because that would make all the sense in the world to me. Is like if there's a spot for him, and we were wondering if he was going to get that bench role out of spring training, and then Miguel Sano got that infield spot. But at this point, I think you bring up Stefanik, especially if you need contact. You saw him lay down a sacrifice bunt with the Bees just the other day, and it went, hey, that's what you're supposed to do. That's what that looks like. Yeah. Also, I'm a little bit frustrated because as of right now, and of course things could change, the Rockies are beating the Guardians 8-4 in Colorado. So because of course they are. Of course, the Rockies are going to be the ones to stop their win streak that the Guardians had. Mike, another thing that the Angels need to do is take advantage of runners in scoring position, and they need to move those runners because they have just not been doing that very well at all. And again, it goes back to reading the room. We talked about it yesterday. These guys have to understand the situation and have to know that the pitching of the other team, of the Yankees, is smart enough to recognize that, hey, they got a runner on third, Taylor Ward's up. I'm not going to give Taylor Ward anything in the zone that he can drive out to the outfield. And that's just something that totally went missed the other day. And then I think they stay aggressive on the base paths. I totally understand the frustration of, well, they're trying too hard, but I still am of the belief that that's a learning curve. And it really depends on who you call on to make those base path decisions and the aggressive running. It can't just be anybody. And again, it can't be Taylor Ward, like we talked about, 44th percentile in sprint speed, like we talked about yesterday. It's got to be your Renjifos and your Netos and your Adeles when they are on the base path. So again, some good pitching matchups here. The numbers say that I think Luis Hill versus Tyler Anderson is going to be the matchup to watch on Wednesday. Yeah. We'll see if we get one of those Griffin Canning starts where it's like 4 innings in the first and then he cruises through the next couple of innings. But Mike, the offense, like you mentioned with the Yankees, is just outrageous right now, especially with Aaron Judge and Juan Soto coming to town. I think that might have been the move of the offseason, is getting Juan Soto to the Yankees. And even if they have the short porch in New York and Juan Soto is a lefty, I mean, he's crushing the baseball. The short porch is not even a factor. He's just crushing the baseball way over that. Yeah. So I think that's a lot of what has caused the success for the Yankees this year. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen every single day. The Angels are playing the Yankees tonight at the Big A, 6:38 Pacific time. It's Griffin Canning versus Nestor Cortez. As we mentioned, you can catch every pitch of the Angels hometown broadcast on SiriusXM with the SXM app. Just search Angels. Coming up on Locked On Angels, since the Yankees are in town, we decided to talk about something that Alex Rodriguez said in the offseason. You probably know what it is, but it was very surprising to Angel fans when it happened. So we're going to talk about it in just a minute.
John, we have a new everydayer to Locked On Angels. It's Stitch Fix, and I feel like this is just for me because
I was going to say it's right up my alley.
Well, can I put both of us in this? Because it's all about upgrading that wardrobe, and it's about throwing out those old T-shirts and worn out pants. And quite honestly, I am a guy that will hang on to every T-shirt and every pair of pants that I've ever worn. In fact, just the other day, I had a rip in my pocket on one of the pair of pants that I was wearing and didn't even realize it until my kids pointed it out. And I was like, oh, what happened here? And I had no idea. I wore it outside. I wore it to church. I wore it everywhere.
You know, I said it the last time we had Stitch Fix on the show, and I said, isn't there like a saying that how you dress in your late 20s is how you dress for the rest of your life? Well, Stitch Fix will not let that happen to you, right, Mike?
No, and I desperately need this. With Stitch Fix, it's easy to upgrade your style with the help of a professional stylist that helps you find new on-trend favorites that works for you. Here's how it works. Just give Stitch Fix, the stylist, your size, style, and budget preferences, and then they send you 5 just for you pieces, plus outfit recommendations and pro styling advice. You keep what works and what you like, and you send the rest back. And here's the good news. Shipping, returns, exchanges are always free, and there's no subscription required. Stitch Fix makes it all so easy. No need to go and shop and look around, because what guy there's going to be some guys that want to do that. I am not in that category. I'm not like, I don't want to go shop. Just get it. Put it on. Let's go. 5 minutes, right? Save time and effort and order from Stitch Fix. Get started today at stitchfix.com/MLB, and you're going to get $20 off your first fix. When you sign up, you got to redeem this within 7 days. So don't wait. Start to look really good and let Stitch Fix help you out. stitchfix.com/MLB for $20 off. Stitch Fix. stitchfix.com/MLB.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Everydayers, FYI, Locked On Sports Today is available to you 24/7. It's a free sports streaming channel program just for you. to bring you the biggest stories across the sports world. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, all the things you love about Locked On Angels, but about the wide world of sports, Michael. Streaming 24/7 on YouTube and the free Amazon Fire TV Channels app. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And speaking of your team every day, the Angels are back at it at home, 6:38 Pacific time against the first place Yankees. Just a perfect situation for them to be playing at home against another first place team.
Watch them take 2 out of 3 because it's the Yankees and then they'll surprise us, right?
Yeah, right. And then everybody will feel like we're going to the playoffs again. Season starts tomorrow. Yep. Catch every pitch of the Angels hometown broadcast on SiriusXM with the SXM app. Just search Angels.
John, before the season started, A-Rod said that there were 3 teams that he asked to be traded to in 2004.
Yes.
So if I had to guess the 3 teams, the first 2 I would have gotten right. The third team I would have been completely off base because he said, I asked to be traded to the Yanks, the Red Sox, and the Angels.
Right.
Which I was shocked at. So here's the official trade. February 15th, 2004, the Yankees sent Rodriguez to the Rangers sent Rodriguez to the Yankees for second baseman Alfonso Soriano and a player to be named later. That player ended up being Joaquin Arias, and he was sent to the Rangers on March 24th. The Rangers also agreed to pay $67 million of the $179 that was left on Rodriguez's contract. He signed a deal in 2001 with the Rangers. It was up in 2011, so it was a 10-year deal. Remember, it was just this remarkable deal. Everybody was like, oh my gosh, $250 million, right? Like, that was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So the Halos, if they made this trade, they could have had A-Rod for 7 seasons, John, and those seasons would have been his age 28 to age 35 seasons. So first question, John, were you surprised by this revelation that the Angels were on the list of teams that A-Rod wanted to go and play for?
It's funny that you say that because, like you said, I could have guessed Yankees, Red Sox, but Angels were a surprise. But to be honest with you, Mike, I mean, yes, when he said that initially, it was like, wow, that's surprising. He wanted to go to the Angels. But then you think about where the Angels were coming off the World Series 2 years ago and then doing the things that they did that offseason, adding Vladimir Guerrero Sr. and everything like that. And they were a good team in 2004. And so there was still a lot of hype around the Angels. I know 2003 was not the best season. They kind of had that World Series hangover and lost some players between, 03 and 04, but they reloaded really well and they had a great 2004 season. In fact, they had a really good year at 92 and 70. They lost in the first round to the Red Sox 3-0. That was the year that Jose Guillen went off on Mike Scioscia. And
there was an incident.
Got suspended the rest of the year and missed the playoffs because he tried to attack Mike Scioscia. Who attacks Mike Scioscia?
Come on.
What's wrong?
Right.
The roster, like I mentioned, had Vladimir Guerrero, Garrett Anderson, David Eckstein, Tim Salmon, Darren Erstad, Sean Figgins, Adam Kennedy. The pitching, don't forget they added Bartolo Colon, Kelvin Escobar, John Lackey, Jared Washburn, and Aaron Seeley that year. And then the bullpen had Troy Percival, K-Rod, Scott Shields. So, man, what a staff that would have been if they had Alex Rodriguez as well. Now, I know what you're already thinking. We're going to get into it a bit later, but yeah, there's a big asterisk, right?
Yes, there is.
And we would be an asterisk this move, if you know what I'm saying, Mike. Big question here, though, Mike. Who would the Halos needed to have traded for Alex Rodriguez?
Yeah, so the actual trade, we're going to use that as an example. They traded a big name in Soriano, Alfonso Soriano, and then a top prospect in Joaquin Arias. He was actually somebody that was doing remarkably well in the minor leagues. I went and looked at his stats. He was 19 when he got traded, John, and so he was a high prospect. So top prospects for the Angels before 2004, Casey Kotchman, Jeff Mathis, Irvin Santana, Dallas McPherson, Bobby Jenks. So I would say that 2 of those guys had pretty good careers in Santana and Jenks. And then Kotchman, Mathis played for 17 years. That was remarkable. And then Dallas McPherson came and went. And then after 04, Ibar, Kendrys Morales, and Brandon Wood also made the list there as well. So 2 out of 3. The Angels had some guys there, right? So who on the major league roster gets traded first. So, Johnny, if it's Erstad or Figgins, or is it a pitcher like K-Rod, or maybe a starter like John Lackey, who on that roster are you trading, or do you think the Angels would have traded for A-Rod?
Oh, man, I'm looking at the fact that, Alfonso Soriano, second baseman.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes me think they're going to want somebody up the middle. And I look at who the Angels had. So perhaps it's Eckstein. Maybe it's even Figgins, because he did have the ability to play up the middle as well. So and of course AK as well. So I'm wondering if it would have been any of those three guys. Not to say that I personally would wanted to have traded them, but I'm just looking at the need of the Rangers in that trade.
Yeah.
And wondering if it would have been one of those three guys who gets traded. Mike, I look at, a player to be named later, and of course it's going to be a top prospect, but good grief. Can you imagine the narrative around Dallas McPherson, or even getting rid of Brandon Wood as the player to be named later? Like, then we don't suffer the consequences of those two.
Yeah.
And we're still talking about those guys today in terms of prospects that never really panned out. Wonder if they do pan out on the Rangers. That could be a different thing. There was a good conversation around Brandon Wood a couple of years ago, and I think there was a former coach from the Angels who said, I personally failed Brandon Wood because I didn't instill the confidence in him and whatnot.
Remember, he had the anxiety issue as well. That was part of the reason why he struggled. And then McPherson was just hurt. He had a ton of injuries, and that's why he never actually made it. But that guy had a swing and could crush the ball. He was like Joey Gallo before Joey Gallo. I mean, that guy could crush the ball. Johnny, if I'm picking the major league player, I think that the Rangers are going to probably push for like a Darren Erstad, because Figgins is still not Sean Figgins at this point. He became Sean Figgins next couple of seasons, and really the 08-09 seasons is when he was really good. So I think that maybe the Rangers are pushing for like a Darren Erstad. I think they're pushing for somebody, maybe even an AK and a Darren Erstad, to be able to help supplement that, because they did obviously want an infielder. But I think an Erstad and an AK, being the major league type of players that they would bring back, would have been the trade. And then there's a part of me, and I have, looking back with my fan heart going, gosh, a team without AK or a team without Erstad, that would be difficult. But at the time, if we were getting A-Rod, I think I would honestly be like, sign me up. I'm all in. I want this.
Yeah. You mentioned Jeff Mathis, and it's so funny to me how ahead of his time he ended up being. Yeah. I know that the offense frustrated you to no end.
Yeah, I think he ended with a 179 career average. I think
he played forever because he was a framer and he was a strike stealer. And now that's what catchers are supposed to be doing these days, until, the automatic balls and strike system happens. But man, just ahead of his time. So that might also, maybe he wasn't valued back then as a catcher for those things, because not everybody was doing those things back then. That's also an interesting wrinkle to this conversation. And speaking of interesting parts of this conversation, we're going to get to probably the most interesting part of the conversation coming right up.
Hey, super grateful for our friends at Game Time. They're now the authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, and it helps get tickets a whole lot faster and easier. I used them when we went to the game just recently, and I know a lot of everydayers use Game Time. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you find ways to save money on tickets. Whether it's last-minute tickets, you can get up to 60% off for concerts, sports, comedy, theater, and more. Or maybe you want to look at their app and see some of the exclusive in-app flash deals on seats that are available ahead of time. And then they have zone deals where you can choose the section, and then Game Time chooses the seat for you. And then my favorite thing, just because maybe it's because I'm a dad, is the all-in pricing at the very end. There's no surprises with Game Time. They show you what you owe at the very end, and there's nothing like, well, what's that? Or why is that there? It's fantastic. You get a panoramic view of where your seats are going to be. When we went on Saturday, I mentioned how we got to sit by the left field foul pole, but we checked to make sure that the pole wasn't in the way, because that would be annoying, right? And it wasn't, because we were able to check on Game Time. They have the lowest price guarantee, and if you find tickets for lower, they're going to credit you 110% of the difference. Love that. And then with every purchase, you receive game time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets. I know, I get it. You're making an investment. You're going to a game. You got to think about who's going to get there and how you're going to drive and what freeways and what food, all that stuff. Game time's going to be like, listen, we got your tickets. They're going to take care of you. So download the app right now. Use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Game Time's going to give you $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONMLB. Get $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
So, Mike, as we continue our conversation about if A-Rod was traded to the Angels, how does that impact the Halos? Well, let me take us back 20 years, Mike.
Good grief.
I'm taking you back 20 years.
Good grief.
I'm not old enough to go back 20 years. What the heck? So how does it impact the Halos if A-Rod were to potentially arrive in Anaheim? Well, in 2004, like I mentioned before, they got 92 wins.
Mm-hmm.
They were swept by the Red Sox, who eventually won the World Series that year. In 2005, they had 95 wins. They had an ALCS loss to the White Sox. In 2006, they had 89 wins and no playoffs. Man, 89 wins. I would give my left foot.
Right?
Yeah,
we would
for 89 wins
that.
right now. In 2007, Mike, 94 wins.
Yeah.
They were swept by the Red Sox again in the first round. They had 100 wins in 2008. Division series loss to the Red Sox 3-1.
Yep.
You know what? Now that I think about it, and I feel like there's some everydayers out there that also feel this way. The Red Sox are our biggest rival.
Right. Right.
Good grief.
Right.
97 wins in 2009, and they had a second round series loss to the Yankees. Of course.
But by the way, that year was the year, right? They were where they beat the Red Sox. That was the Vlad Guerrero walk-off hit. And I remember you and I and all the family were at the local pizza place. Do you remember that? And we were watching it on the TV and we yelled and screamed and we scared the kids because we were so excited. I remember that.
Now, the key to this second round series loss to the Yankees was that, of course, A-Rod was on that Yankees team. Mike, he had listen to this, a 1.519 OPS in this series, including 3 home runs and 8 RBIs. Now, you did mention that he would have been an Angel through 2011. So let me go to 2010. They had 80 wins. 2011, they had 86 wins. This is the season where the Halos traded for Vernon Wells, Michael.
Yep.
Now, with all of that said, what changes with A-Rod with the Halos? Mike, do they get to more than past the first round of the ALDS and maybe even make it to the World Series? How many World Series do you think they get to in actuality?
You know, if I look at this list right now, I think in 2009 that we're beating the Yanks because
especially they don't have A-Rod on the team.
That team
He's
was
on our
so
team.
good. Yes, that team was so good. And then honestly, in 2005, I think we beat the White Sox because it was so close. That was the year where Doug Eddings says, no, it was a strike. It wasn't an out. And
it's just my dance move.
Right. AJ Przinsky ran to first and, all that stuff. Right. And the ball didn't hit the ground, all of that stuff. So I think that perhaps there's a different outcome there. We talked about this on yesterday's show. The team right now needs that person that is the veteran that's really good, that understands runners in scoring position, understands base running, the Mike Trouts, the Shoheis, right? And I think A-Rod would have been that guy for the Angels at this point. The biggest thing that I think happens here, John, because this was 2004 when the trade would have been made. Mm-hmm. I wonder if Vlad Guerrero isn't signed.
Oh.
I wonder if they don't go after Vlad
That's
because
true.
they brought in A-Rod. That would have been, I think, a game changer for the Halos because Vlad is one of my favorite, if not my favorite Angel. And so I wonder if they wouldn't have spent that money because it was a 5-year deal, I believe, at $75 million or something like that, where you're like, wow, that's incredible for someone like that. So I wonder if they don't make that move and sign Vlad Guerrero.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And it kind of changes the whole face of what the Angels look like, in the mid 2000s. And so that's an interesting case as well, because maybe they don't have as much success as they did. And so you can't assume, it's Vlad and A-Rod. It's A-Rod or Vlad. That's a big question right
Now, the
there.
Yanks did pay down a bunch of money, so I could see the Angels still making that move. But then the bigger question, John, is the steroid use, right?
Right.
That's the bigger question. So would that have been a problem for you?
I mean, look, it doesn't seem to be a problem for the Yankees and all the success that they had in their 2009 World Series championship.
Nobody really talks about it, right?
And nobody really talks about it. And yes, we all call him A-Royd and A-Fraud and all of those things. That would have been a bummer to have. So I think, Mike, if I go back to your Vladdy or A-Rod situation, if that might be the reality of the situation, I'm taking Vladdy because of who he is, his character, and everything that he did for the Halos and continues to do for the Halos. He's a Hall of Famer with an Angels cap on, and he's the only Hall of Famer the Angels have with an Angels cap on in Cooperstown.
Yep.
And so that, to me, now that you pitch that either or, that to me is a big deal. But when it comes to the steroid use, I'm like, well, if they won 2 World Series over the course of that, like, does that bother me? I don't know.
And this would have been such an Angels narrative, right? Because it's not like they haven't had any scandals in the organization. And so this would have just fit right into the narrative. And so just, you know what? If we got 2 World Series, pile it on, baby. Pile it on.
What's that gif of the guy like putting himself in dirt and burying himself? That would have been us.
Yes.
Talking about 2 potential World Series or whatnot. I think they would have at least gotten to 2 more World Series if the team was intact plus A-Rod. But again, I go back to that situation that you bring up, the either or, and I'll take Vladdy 100% of the time.
Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. The Angels play the Yanks tonight, 6:38 Pacific time, and you can catch every pitch of the Angels' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Angels.
Hey, give us a follow at Locked On Angels on Twitter and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Whether you're watching or listening, come on over to YouTube, find today's episode, get in the comments section, hit that like button on the way down to the comments section. Mike, what do we have on deck for tomorrow's show?
You'll never guess who's taking the blame for the starter's struggles, and it's making me love him as a player even more. And I'm going to share all of the details and who it is tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
All right, looking forward to that conversation. You got me guessing over here. You're not even going to tell your co-host? What the heck?
Nope.
All right, I'll just sit and wait for it. And
tune in tomorrow
with our everyday. Yeah, I'll tune in tomorrow too. All right, friends, thanks for being here. Until tomorrow's show, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
All right, we will see you back here on Wednesday.
A-Rod on the Angels. Man, all those bombs, all those home runs, all those RBIs.
In our favor.